Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise to deliver the essential insights you need.
Great to be here.
Today we're navigating a really critical intersection, modern medicine and data privacy.
It's a huge topic right now.
We are sitting on just staggering volumes of health data. And if we can harness it effectively, share it, analyze it, scale it.
The potential is massive. We're talking personalized treatments, much faster drug discovery, maybe even better pandemic responses.
Exactly. But there's this fundamental friction point, isn't there? What we're calling the privacy conundrum.
The societal benefit needs access to the data.
But that data itself is maybe the most sensitive information anyone owns.
It really is. It's the ultimate high-stakes trade-off. And for decades, the main answer, the primary way we've handled this, has been de-identified data.
Right, the traditional workhorse. That method of sort of scrubbing real records until the risk of figuring out who the patient is seems, well, acceptable.
Acceptable, yeah. But maybe acceptable risk isn't quite cutting it anymore for researchers or for patients themselves.
Which brings us perfectly to the emerging alternative, the one that people are saying could be a real paradigm shift.
Synthetic data.
Synthetic data. So our deep dive mission today is pretty straightforward. We're going to unpack these two approaches, de-identified versus synthetic.
Look at how they work, their core mechanics.
What are their weaknesses? What are the risks? And ultimately, try to figure out which one is, well, better suited to safeguard our future right now.
It's a complex question. What does safer even mean here?
Good point. Okay, let's dig in. Let's start with the traditional approach, de-identification. This has been the standard for years, right?
For a long time, yes. And the key thing here is it doesn't create new data. It takes real, actual patient records.
From real people.
From real people, exactly. And it surgically removes or transforms the identifying markers.
Think of it like redacting a document, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. A meticulous, multi-stage redaction. You start with the obvious stuff, the direct identifiers.
Names, social security numbers, medical IDs, full addresses.
Right. Those are relatively easy to just excise, to cut out. Dates often get generalized too, like maybe only using the year of birth.
Oh, I heard about a really specific rule for age, too.
Yes, a particularly stringent one is generalizing ages 90 and older to just age 90 or older.
Why is that?
To protect those very unique individuals. The older someone is, the rarer their age bracket becomes, making them potentially easier to identify.
Makes sense. But, okay, removing the obvious stuff is one thing. The real challenge, I imagine, comes with the indirect identifiers.
That's absolutely the crux of the problem. These are the little pieces of information that seem harmless on their own.
Like what? An area code, maybe?
An area code, maybe a rare diagnosis, the exact date someone was admitted to hospital, things like that.
And when you combine those seemingly innocuous bits,
suddenly you can get a kind of digital fingerprint. It can pinpoint a specific individual, especially if you're looking at a smaller population group.
So how do they deal with that? That seems much harder to just remove.
It is. Researchers have to generalize the data quite heavily to mitigate that risk.
So like changing a specific street address to just the county or zip code.
Exactly. Or replacing an exact age with an age range, say 40-49 instead of 43. Or grouping rare diseases into broader categories.
What if a record is still too unique even after generalization?
Then sometimes they have to resort to suppression. That means just removing specific data points, or sometimes even entire records if they're deemed too risky, too unique.
Or aggregation, right? Just releasing averages.
Yes, releasing only statistical summaries, like the average blood pressure for a group, not the individual readings.
And this isn't just guesswork, is it? There's a regulatory side.
Oh, absolutely. Institutions don't just decide it feels safe. There are established methods. One is just removing a specific list of 18 identifiers, like under IPA's safe harbor method.
But there's a more robust way.
Yes, the expert determination method. This is where a qualified statistical expert analyzes the data and the context and has to certify that the risk of re-identification is, and this is the actual standard, very small.
Very small. That sounds reassuring, but also a bit vague.
It is a statistical assessment, yes.
What?
But it provides a clear legal and regulatory framework. People know how to operate within it.
Okay, so let's talk strengths then. The big upside of using real, de-identified data.
The biggest advantage, especially for science, is you're working with the genuine article. The exact statistical properties, the relationships, the subtle realities of how things work in the real world.
Like how diseases actually progress or how different drugs might interact.
Exactly. That's all perfectly preserved. So your research findings should be directly generalizable back to the real patient population.
You have the highest possible fidelity to reality.
Correct.
But if that's the strength, then the limitation, the Achilles heel, must be that specter of re-identification.
It never truly goes away. The risk is rarely, if ever, zero, precisely because the records came from real people. There's always a theoretical link back.
And this isn't just theoretical, right? Hasn't this been demonstrated?
Oh, yes. There are historical examples that really underscore this vulnerability, some famous work, even decades ago now.
I think I remember this, linking voter data.
That's the one. Researchers took supposedly anonymized hospital discharge data records, scrubbed clean, or so they thought, and managed to link them with publicly available voter registration records.
Ew. What did they match on?
Just a few common variables. Things like birth date, gender, and zip code or area code.
And that was enough.
It was enough to prove that a significant number of individuals could be successfully re-identified. It was a real wake-up call.
So de-identification isn't like a binary switch. You flip it, and data goes from identifiable to anonymous.
Not at all. It exists on a spectrum of risk. It's about reducing the risk to an acceptable level, not eliminating it.
And the more you try to lower that risk, the more you generalize, the more you suppress.
The more you run into the other major limitation.
Which is the loss of utility.
Precisely. You start scrubbing out the nuances, the fine details.
And for the kind of advanced analysis we do today, machine learning, AI, those tools thrive on rich, detailed information, don't they?
They absolutely do. So removing outliers or generalizing those subtle combinations of features can really hamper the quality of insights you can get. It blunts the power of the analysis.
Okay, so de-identification is like the necessary old guard. It's established, it works to a point.
But it's fighting a tough battle against ever smarter ways to link data, ever more powerful computing.
And that realization that inherent vulnerability is really what paved the way for this new contender we mentioned.
Synthetic data.
Right. So if de-identification is the old guard with this known weakness, this lingering risk, what does synthetic data promise to fix?
Well, it aims to fix the core problem, the re-identification risk, by taking a radically different approach.
Yeah.
It essentially sidesteps the issue by removing the direct link to real individuals altogether.
How? What does that mean in practice?
It means synthetic data is not real data that's been altered. It is artificially generated data.
Made up.
Made up, yes, but in a very sophisticated way. It's designed to statistically resemble the original real data set it was based on. But crucially, it contains no information, no data points that came directly from any original person.
Okay, that's the fundamental difference then. It's not a redaction of real records.
No.
It's a completely crafted replica. How does that even work? It sounds a bit like magic.
Well, it's not magic, but it is pretty advanced stuff. It involves high-level statistical modeling and often cutting-edge AI.
You mentioned GANs earlier.
Yes, generative adversarial networks, or GANs, are one common technique. There are others too, like variational autoencoders or VAEs. These algorithms don't just copy the data points.
What do they do instead?
They learn the underlying statistical blueprint of the real data. Think of it like learning the data's statistical DNA, all the patterns, the distributions, the complex correlations between different variables.
So the AI studies the real data to understand its structure.
Exactly. And once the model understands that blueprint well enough, it then generates entirely new, completely synthetic data points that follow those learned rules and patterns.
So these new records, these patient profiles in the synthetic data set, they're fabrications. They were literally made up by the AI based on the patterns it saw.
Precisely. They never existed in the real world.
And because they never existed.
The core strength becomes immediately apparent. Inherent privacy. There is no original patient record to somehow trace back to.
Which means the re-identification risk we talked about with de-identified data.
It's virtually eliminated. That's the fundamental promise.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge difference. And that must unlock some significant advantages.
Absolutely. Think about enhanced shareability, for one.
How so?
Well, suddenly collaborating across institutions, maybe even across national borders, becomes much easier. You don't run into the same strict regulatory walls or data residency rules that often forbid sending real patient data elsewhere.
Because it's not technically real patient data anymore.
Right. It lowers those barriers to access quite dramatically.
That could really accelerate research. What else?
Well, there's also the potential to address data scarcity.
Ah, for rare diseases, maybe?
Exactly. Imagine a research hospital only has records for, say, a handful of patients with a very rare condition. That's usually not enough for robust analysis.
Too small a sample size.
Right. But They could potentially use the statistical patterns found in those few real records to generate a much larger synthetic data set.
Giving them enough data to actually run meaningful studies, train models.
Potentially, yes.
Oh.
It allows research into specific cohorts that might have been impossible before. There's even a theoretical ability to mitigate bias, like if your real data is skewed, you could try to generate synthetic data that corrects for known imbalances.
That sounds almost too good to be true. If this data is entirely generated by an AI, how much can we actually trust it? Doesn't that lack of a direct link to reality introduce its own risks?
That is the million-dollar question, and yes, it absolutely introduces challenges.
I mean, what if the AI model misses something crucial? A really subtle pattern, maybe a rare side effect from a drug interaction that only happens in, like, 1% of patients?
That's the essential limitation, precisely. It boils down to this fidelity versus utility trade-off again, but in a different way than with de-identification.
How so?
While good synthetic data can replicate the majority of the statistical patterns really well, it might struggle to perfectly capture every single subtle nuance, or, critically, those very rare occurrences, the extreme outliers.
The things that might be clinically the most important.
Exactly. If you're researching those rare, potentially life-saving or life-threatening anomalies, and the generative model just didn't learn them properly or smooth them over,
then the synthetic data is worse than useless for that specific task. It could be misleading.
it could be. Which means validation isn't just a nice to have.
It's absolutely mission critical. You have to rigorously prove that the synthetic data is, well, good enough for the job you want it to do.
Absolutely. Rigorous validation is non-negotiable. It means running extensive tests, comparing statistical properties, running the same analyses on both the real and synthetic data to see if you get consistent, reliable results.
That sounds complex and time-consuming.
It is. And that's another hurdle. Generating and validating high-quality synthetic data requires sophisticated AI and statistical expertise. It requires computational resources. It's not a simple plug-and-play process.
And there's probably a trust issue too, right? Getting people comfortable with using fake data.
Definitely. It's still a relatively new concept in healthcare, so there's natural skepticism. It requires very transparent communication about how the data was generated and validated.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork. De-identified data, based on reality, high fidelity, but carries that lingering re-identification risk.
Right.
Synthetic data, artificially generated, much higher privacy, virtually no re-aid risk, but questions around fidelity and the need for intense validation.
That's a good summary.
So now for the big question, the ultimate showdown. What's really the safer bet for driving innovation forward responsibly?
Well, the answer, maybe frustratingly, is
It depends. It's genuinely nuanced. Safety here isn't just one thing. It's context dependent, and it always involves that trade-off between risk and utility.
okay, but let's break it down. If the absolute #1 priority is eliminating the threat of re-identification,
Then well-generated synthetic data is theoretically safer, hands down. Because those records never existed in the real world, the fear of linking them back to an individual or linking them with other data sets to reveal identity just isn't there in the same way.
so on that specific axis, re-identification risk synthetic wins.
Theoretically, yes. De-identified data, no matter how well done, always carries some residual risk because it originated from real people.
Okay, but what about the utility axis, the fidelity?
That's where de-identified data still holds an edge, especially for certain tasks. If you need the absolute highest fidelity to the real-world data, like for developing a super-sensitive diagnostic algorithm maybe, or for data submitted for regulatory approval.
Exactly. In those cases, where every subtle nuance or rare event in the real data might be critically important, the real, though de-identified data, retains greater analytical strength. It preserves those unique interactions or rare disease progressions that a generative model might inadvertently smooth over or miss entirely.
So synthetic might miss the edge cases sometimes.
It's a risk you have to actively validate against. De-identified data contains those edge cases, even if some surrounding detail is generalized.
What about the legal side? That seems like a huge practical consideration.
It's massive right now. De-identified data, especially when done according to established standards like healthepi as expert determination or safe harbor.
It has a clear legal pathway. Regulators understand it. There are precedents.
Precisely. It often falls outside the most restrictive parts of privacy regulations because it's not considered identifiable personal information anymore. It's a known quantity for legal and compliance teams.
But synthetic data.
It's the new kid on the block. Its legal classification is still evolving, frankly. It's much less established.
So even if it's technically better for privacy, institutions might be hesitant.
Absolutely. Until regulators globally provide really clear guidance on how to treat data that is statistically representative but doesn't link to real people, that uncertainty creates a significant barrier to adoption. Fear of regulatory ambiguity is real.
That's a really important practical point. There's another angle too. What about revealing patterns about a group, even if individuals are safe?
That's a great point, sometimes called ethical leakage or group privacy harm, even if you can't identify John Smith.
Could the data, whether de-identified or synthetic, reveal something sensitive about, say, everyone in a specific small town, like a surprisingly high rate of a stigmatized illness?
Yes, and that information, even though aggregated, could potentially lead to discrimination or policy changes that negatively impact that group. Both methods need safeguards against that kind of harm. It's not just about individual re-identification.
So it really highlights that neither method is a perfect magic bullet.
Not at all.
Which brings us to the practical path forward. How should organizations, researchers, policymakers think about using these tools strategically? What does this all mean for the data policies that affect us?
I think the consensus emerging is that we need a strategic, fit-for-purpose approach. You have to choose the right tool or combination of tools based on the specific use case.
Meaning you assess the acceptable risk level and the required data fidelity for that particular task.
Exactly. So let's try and define those use cases a bit more clearly.
Okay. When should you stick with de-identified data?
You'd use de-identified data when that high fidelity, that closeness to the real-world distribution is absolutely critical.
Like we said, maybe for the final validation of a diagnostic AI or for regulatory submissions?
Yes. And crucially, this should ideally happen within highly secure, controlled environments. Think of it as needing a digital fortress around the real data, even when it's de-identified. Strong governance is key.
Got it. So inside the fortress, carefully manage de-identified data for high-fidelity tasks. When does synthetic data become the better choice?
You'd lean towards synthetic data when the absolute elimination or near elimination of re-identification risk is the paramount goal.
Especially if the data needs to leave that secure fortress.
Precisely. For broader data sharing, public data releases, collaborations across complex institutional or maybe national boundaries where moving real data is difficult or prohibited.
What about for development work, like training AI models?
It's potentially ideal for that, yes.
Yeah.
Training the bulk of machine learning models, rapid prototyping, testing systems, synthetic data could be great because the privacy risk is so low. You might then fine-tune the model on a smaller set of carefully controlled real data later.
And for augmenting those scarce data sets we talked about.
Absolutely. That remains a key potential use case.
This sounds like it's leading towards not choosing one over the other, but maybe using both.
I think that's where the most sophisticated approaches are heading, towards a hybrid model.
The best of both worlds.
That's the idea. In a hybrid system, you'd use your valuable, real, de-identified data for the core, most sensitive analyses, the things only the real measurements can truly tell you.
And you keep that lockdown tight inside the fortress.
Right. But then you use that same real data as the basis to generate high-quality synthetic data.
And that synthetic data can then be used
for almost everything else. Wider exploratory analysis, sharing with external partners who don't need access to the real stuff, preliminary model training, public dashboards, tasks where near-perfect privacy is essential and slightly lower fidelity might be acceptable.
That makes a lot of sense. You get the fidelity where it counts most and near unbreakable privacy for broader use and distribution.
It optimizes the risk-utility trade-off much better than relying solely on one method.
But but neither of these is a set-it-and-forget-it solution, right?
Absolutely not. That's the crucial final caveat, and it applies equally to both methods.
They both need strong governance.
Robust data governance, clear usage policies, and maybe most importantly, continuous monitoring and evaluation.
What does that mean specifically for de-identified data?
It means ongoing risk assessments. Are there new external data sets available that could increase linkage risk? Is computing power now strong enough to crack previous assumptions? You have to keep checking.
And for synthetic data?
It means continuous, rigorous validation. Is the synthetic data still accurately reflecting the underlying patterns, especially if the real data source is updated? Is its utility holding up for the intended tasks? You can't just generate it once and assume it's good forever.
Constant vigilance for both. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly synthesize the fundamental lesson here. what's the core takeaway?
I think it's understanding that key difference. De-identified data offers the highest fidelity, the closest link to reality, but it inherently carries a persistent, maybe small but real re-identification risk. And that risk is getting harder to manage as technology advances.
While synthetic data offers near unbreakable privacy from re-identification because it's artificially generated.
But it requires extremely careful, ongoing validation to ensure its insights are actually reliable and useful, especially for critical applications like clinical decision-making. The fidelity isn't guaranteed.
The future of health, it's undeniably data-driven. We need this data for progress.
We do. And ensuring we approach this in a privacy-conscious way isn't just nice to have, it's an ethical imperative.
So for you, the listener, maybe the provocative thought is this: you should feel empowered to participate in how your information is used.
Yes, regardless of the specific methods being employed, de-identified, synthetic, hybrid, career. The crucial questions you can ask, or that institutions should be asking themselves, remain the same.
How is my health data actually being protected? Are the methods they're choosing really fit for the specific purpose they're using it for?
Are they maximizing the utility for research and health improvement, while genuinely maintaining maximum safety? And crucially, are those robust governance and monitoring processes actually in place and being followed?
Understanding this tension, the known weakness of de-identification versus the uncertain fidelity of synthesis, hopefully empowers everyone to advocate for these smarter, often hybrid strategies.
Strategies that can help secure health innovation responsibly for everyone's benefit. The conversation is really just beginning, and the technology is evolving incredibly fast.
It's a fascinating and complex space, for sure.
Definitely.
Well, thank you for joining us for this really crucial deep dive today. We hope you stay curious, stay informed, and maybe stay a little vigilant about your data. Until next time.